We use the word beautiful all the time. A beautiful performance, a beautiful solution to a problem, even a beautiful gesture. It's such an easy compliment, but if you actually stop and try to pin down what beauty is, the whole concept sort of collapses.
Yeah.
Is it something we feel or something the object actually has? Is it just my opinion, or is there some kind of universal truth to it?
That tension you're pointing to is exactly what makes beauty one of the great philosophical ideas. And that's what we're exploring today, using this really in-depth essay that's rooted in the Syntopicon tradition, which was, this massive project to organize the great ideas of Western thought. And this essay treats beauty not just as something for art class, but as a concept that spans metaphysics, psychology, ethics, the whole lot.
So our mission really is to trace where philosophy has tried to locate beauty over the last 2,500 years, to sort of chart the battle for where it resides. Is it this transcendent thing out in some realm of forms?
Or is it imminent, realized right here in the concrete world?
Or is it just in my head? Purely subjective. It's a huge and, I think, a fascinating journey.
It really is. And for you, our listener, experiencing this analysis, it's probably a good moment to mention that you're hearing a unique two-host AI conversation. We're powered by Google's Notebook LM, and that technology lets us, it helps us synthesize centuries of thought and pull out the core ideas you need to get a handle on this great idea.
Okay, so let's unpack this historical battle. And there's really no better place to start than Plato. If you look at his dialogues like the Symposium or...
Well, Hippias Major, right. He absolutely sets the standard for all the philosophy that follows.
Exactly. He argues that beauty is what he calls a paradigmatic form. So what does that actually mean?
It means that beauty, with a capital B, is simple, eternal, and it's unchanging. It exists outside of our messy, temporary world, totally independent of any particular beautiful thing. Think of it like a perfect circle. You can draw millions of circles, but none of them are the mathematically ideal circle. They're just reflections. Plato would say they are participating in the form of the circle.
All right, so a beautiful song or a beautiful painting is only beautiful because it's imperfectly reflecting that one perfect, pure, external form of beauty. The painting can fade, but the form of beauty that's untouched. It's this absolute perfection everything else just borrows from.
And that leads directly to his famous idea, the Platonic ascent of the lover. The journey isn't just about appreciating nice things. It's deeply pedagogical. It's moral. The soul starts out, captivated by the beauty of one person's body, but that attraction has to mature. It has to move upward.
Upward from physical beauty to what?
To the beauty of multiple bodies, then to the beauty of souls, and then even higher to the beauty of just laws and customs, and finally, the beauty of the sciences.
And this whole ascent is so crucial because it's literally drawing the soul away from the sensory world, the world of change and decay, and up into the stable, intelligible world of the intellect. The essay points out that this ultimate intelligible beauty is absolute and everlasting, and it's really closely tied to the form of the good.
Yes, that link is critical. The connection between beauty and goodness ensures that the pursuit of beauty is never trivial. It's a path to wisdom. Plato is essentially saying, look, if you follow the trail of what is beautiful far enough, it must lead you to what is true and what is good. It's a non-negotiable part of intellectual and spiritual life.
So that's the transcendent framework. If Plato's beauty is way up in the heavens, how did Aristotle manage to bring it crashing back down to earth?
Well, Aristotle just shifts the location of beauty so radically. He was a great biologist, a great observer of the world, and he wanted to know where the beauty actually is in the thing itself. He moves the focus away from some separate, unseeable form and puts it on beauty as a quality that's realized within a specific concrete thing, whether it's natural or man-made.
Okay, so instead of asking what is beauty, he's asking what makes this thing a beautiful thing? What qualities did he pin down?
His classic requirements are unity, proportion, and clarity. It's a structural account, really. A beautiful object has to have a clearly defined structure, that's unity. Its parts have to relate to the whole in a harmonious way, that's proportion. And it has to be clearly perceivable by the mind, clarity.
That sounds almost scientific, like a blueprint for what makes something excellent.
It is. His theory is fundamentally immanent and teleological. And teleological just means that beauty is found in the way a thing successfully achieves its purpose, its end goal. For Aristotle, art imitates nature. So a beautiful statue or a beautiful animal mirrors and even intensifies the order and purposiveness that's already there in living things. A beautiful horse is one that is the perfectly realized form of a horse. It functions flawlessly.
That really clarifies the distinction. So Plato's beauty is aspirational. It points us toward transcendence. But Aristotle's beauty is structural. It's the pleasure we get from seeing perfection realized right here and now, a pleasure that comes from order and, I guess, technical success.
And that structural immanent approach turned out to be incredibly durable. It moved right from the classical world into the Middle Ages.
Let's talk about that, the integration.
Yeah.
How did Christian thought manage to synthesize these two, seemingly opposite ideas, the transcendent form and the immanent structure?
You see a really beautiful intellectual synthesis here. Later thinkers, and I mean most influentially Thomas Aquinas, they codified that Aristotelian line of thought. Aquinas, using Aristotle's framework, defined the objective marks of the beautiful as integrity, proportion, and brightness, or radiance. The Latin is claritas.
Brightness. That sounds a bit like a nod back to Plato, maybe.
It absolutely is. While he was relying on Aristotle's structure, Aquinas defined beauty as the way that goodness becomes evident and delightful to someone who knows it. Beauty is goodness made perceptible. It's virtue made visible.
And at the same time, the Platonic tradition didn't just disappear. It got a huge boost from Neoplatonism, right?
Yeah.
Particularly from Plotinus.
Plotinus provided the intellectual path to fully integrate beauty into a kind of divine hierarchy. He traced all the finite beauties we see, bodily, psychic, intellectual, all the way back to an intelligible beauty rooted in the One, or the divine intellect. For Plotinus, beauty is that moment the soul recognizes its own spiritual kinship with the cosmos. It's a moment of recognition.
So thinkers like Augustine and Aquinas could then see the entire Christian cosmos through that lens. They could see beauty as a direct reflection of God's harmony and measure and radiance in creation. The world is beautiful because it shows us ordered variety under a single unity. And human art becomes this virtuous act of participating in God's creative wisdom.
For more than 1,000 years, you just couldn't really talk about beauty without also talking about God and the fundamental structure of reality. Beauty was completely inseparable from theology and metaphysics.
And this is exactly where the modern turn becomes so revolutionary. The Enlightenment comes along and basically says, okay, we're going to study beauty, but we're leaving God and metaphysics out of the discussion.
Yes, the modern project separates aesthetics from those deep cosmic roots. The philosophical location of beauty shifts again massively. It moves from the object and from the heavens straight into the mind of the observer.
The key figure here has to be Immanuel Kant. How did he redefine aesthetic judgment without falling back on God or the forms?
Kant just analyzed the experience itself, independent of where the object came from. He argued that judgments of beauty are disinterested. And that word is absolutely critical. It means that when you say something is beautiful, you're not judging it based on its usefulness or its moral value or even whether you want to own it. You're judging it purely on its form.
So, for example, if I look at a beautifully made axe, and I say it's beautiful because I could use it to chop wood, that's an interested appreciation. I value its function.
Right.
But if I say it's beautiful just because of the curve of the handle and the balance of the steel, even if I have no use for an axe, that is disinterestedness.
Precisely. And here is the paradox. Even though it's subjective and disinterested, the judgment of beauty claims a kind of universality. Kant said that when you call something beautiful, you are asserting that everyone should agree with you, even if you can't give them a logical rule for why they should. He said this experience comes from the free harmony of imagination and understanding in your mind. The mind just enjoys organizing what it sees.
So we've moved from eternal forms to immanent structural rules, and now to a private psychological event that somehow still expects public agreement.
That is the monumental shift. It's an attempt to save beauty from total relativism by saying that while it starts with a subjective feeling, it's structured by the way all human minds tend to work.
This is such a huge shift. And, as we continue to unpack these major ideas that organize human thought, navigating this tension between classical objectivity and modern subjectivity, we want to remind you about Mindful Moments. That's our YouTube channel offering AI analysis, summaries, and critiques, all to inspire reflection and rational thought. It's a great resource for exploring the history of these great ideas.
So, building on Kant's focus on subjective valuation, we see the definitive modern move with George Santayana. His classic definition from The Sense of Beauty is just so clear. He famously defined beauty as pleasure regarded as the quality of a thing, or, even more simply, pleasure objectified.
Pleasure objectified. That phrase just perfectly captures the whole transition from metaphysics to psychology, doesn't it? It means we have a subjective feeling, pleasure, and then we mistakenly project that feeling onto the object itself, and we call the object beautiful.
Exactly. Santayana really emphasizes that human perception mediates everything. He underlines that aesthetic experience is rooted in human valuation. But importantly, he wasn't just reducing beauty to, like, a personal whim. His work still looks at structural features like symmetry and coherence. But the essential part is the psychological pleasure that we feel and then attribute to the thing. Beauty becomes, fundamentally, a human experience, not a cosmic truth.
So what does this whole philosophical journey mean for us today? Why did the philosophers behind the Syntopicon pick beauty as one of the foundational great ideas?
They sorted the great ideas into groups, and truth, goodness, and beauty form this fundamental triad. These are ideas we use to judge the world order and value. They're distinct from action-guiding ideas like justice or liberty, and beauty is essential because it informs our judgment of completeness and harmony.
Which brings us to the relevance for you, the listener. The essay suggests beauty acts as a kind of test for the completeness of human flourishing. How can a life be judged incomplete just for lacking aesthetic appreciation?
Well, imagine a life, or even a whole culture, that is absolutely obsessed with truth, scientific facts, data, and with goodness, moral purity, ethical rules, but is utterly devoid of aesthetic appreciation. A life where art is just decoration, where function always trumps form. That life, the essay argues, is truncated. You might have successfully pursued truth and morality, but you're missing the delight, the order, and the expressive capacity that beauty provides. It's the essential third pillar for a full human life.
It provides the delight that keeps us from living in a totally utilitarian gray box. But let's circle back to the modern problem. If beauty is just subjective pleasure, even if it is objectified, doesn't that undermine its role as a necessary pillar for a flourishing life?
This is the critical challenge of modern aesthetics, and the essay is very clear on this. Beauty itself must be judged. We can't just allow anything that fascinates us or gives us a fleeting pleasure to qualify as truly beautiful, not in the fullest sense. We have to judge beauty by external standards, by truth, by coherence, and by moral reciprocity.
In other words, if a system is beautiful, say a political ideology or a design that is really elegant and coherent, but it's also morally destructive, that its beauty has to be questioned. It has to be rejected as incomplete.
Exactly. The classical philosophers saw beauty as this necessary bridge. It was a way to move from the sensible world to the intelligible world, for Plato, or a way for goodness to become visible, for Aquinas. What's so fascinating here is to ask what happens when modern aesthetics tries to analyze beauty purely in terms of subjective, disinterested pleasure. That link between beauty and goodness was severed, and if that connection is lost, what happens to that essential bridge? Does it just collapse, leaving truth and goodness stranded and maybe less accessible? That is the profound question we'll leave you to explore on your own.
That is a challenging and profound point. We have traced the philosophical tension from Plato's absolute external form to Aristotle's immanent structure, through the Christian synthesis, and finally into the modern subjective valuation defined by Kant and Santayana. Thank you for joining us for this analysis of beauty. Click the link on screen for the in-depth essay summary. Subscribe, share, purchase via link, and think rationally. See the many genre-based podcasts at Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go.